Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm T4 and today we're continuing the progress on phase 2 of my fortress. As you can see behind me, we've still got some clearing to do, some cleanup to do. I want to run a wall down this side here across the river. I'm probably not going to have a gate on this side. If I do, it definitely won't be as big. It'd be more so for like a carve or a raft, if anything, but probably not. So far, all I have done today, once I stop saying so much, so far, all I have done is just pushed this back a little bit. This hill was like right against the wall. I'm not sure if you guys remember or not from a couple episodes ago, but I just pushed it back and threw some stuff on it to try to make it look a little bit more natural. And right now, I'm just trying to get my switchback road here sorted out, as well as figure out and plan ahead of exactly how I'm gonna run this wall, because it's basically purely downhill and it's gonna be a challenge to do it to continue with the 3 high, but challenges are good, challenges are fun, so let's get into it. So as per usual, I'm going to take this opportunity to remind you that although this is a survivor world, I am in fact in hammer mode purely for the sake of not having to run back and forth between the supplies and the building area, because we all love running around for no reason. Also, if you wouldn't mind hitting that like and subscribe button, it would mean the world to me and support the channel ever so much more than you know. Now, as you can see, I'm starting off with some clearing, a little bit of cleanup so that building is just a little bit easier. One thing I did notice was while trying to build downhill instead of trying to build uphill is how surprisingly difficult it was to build downhill. Thankfully, Valheim has introduced some new snap points in some of the recent updates. So if you hit E while you are trying to build, it will actually cycle through the different snap points of the building pieces. Now, go ahead and sit back and relax and let's watch me build a wall. Something you may notice if you care to read the comments down in the left-hand corner between me and chat is a lot of chat discussion while filming this video was centered around how we feel about the building system in Valheim and some of the things that could be done to change, improve, alter the building system just a little bit to help out those who appreciate building in Valheim. As I'm sure you've noticed, I've done my best to stick with the half-lap running bond for the wall, just because, again, I don't really like straight lines up and down if I can avoid them. And I did manage to keep my 3 high pretty consistently, as best as I could, considering the downhill nature of this particular wall. I'm also going to take this opportunity to just let you know that if you go ahead and check out the description of this video, you will find a link to my Twitch channel where you can join me for these builds live most Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Now, in typical T4 fashion, I decided to use an iron beam as scaffolding. Yes, there are cheaper materials, but again, being in hammer mode, I don't have to be as picky with what I'm using as scaffolding. I was having some difficulty balancing on the beam, go figure, so I did eventually put down some floors to make it just a little bit easier. Now, something I will point out is I didn't actually put in a gate, I did put in a grate instead, just to allow the perception of water passage through the fence or through the wall, but I don't plan on having any boats or any other vehicles pass through this part of the wall, so I decided to keep the wall solid and just put like a little decorative water gate down at the bottom. And now at this point, I decided it was time to do some cleaning up, some beautification, so I started putting down some stone pathways, after having a little bit of trouble with the groundwork, of course. I also, as you'll see coming up, I cleared out a lot of the stones, a lot of the brush, wood, a whole bunch of things just to make the place look a little bit more ready to be built on. And I gotta be honest, I've really taken a liking to the way the wall looks when you do stone groundwork underneath it. It just, to my eyes, it makes the stone walls look a little bit more supported when they're sitting on top of stone as to just into the dirt. Let me know down in the comments if you would like any kind of video on the way I do my groundwork or my stone walls or anything like that. Otherwise, I'll probably just continue doing my videos the way you see here, because from what I can tell, it's not too difficult to see the way I actually go about the process. But if you would like any pointers or a clarification on anything, just let me know down in the comments and I'll do my best to clear things up. And as I mentioned, just clearing up some stones and some other things. Eventually I do move these carts out of the way. If I remember in editing, I'll cut that out because you don't need to see me walking around just pulling a bunch of carts. And I also did eventually set up a bed in the building area so that it didn't have to run all the way over the hill to my large house, essentially. Yes, the Everjoy is pushing logs around in the water. Now for this particular part here, what I'm doing is laying the groundwork for what eventually is going to become a dock. I'm gonna do my best to make it look like a industrial shipping hub, although it is going to be a bit of a challenge because there just simply aren't the pieces to do it with in this game. But I'm gonna do my best, and once we actually get that project going, I'm hoping some inspiration will come to light because I have an image in my mind's eye of how I would like it to look. I think the challenge in Valheim is going to be making that image come to fruition, considering the lack of rope looking material to build with. And again, with the stone, keeping in mind that this is essentially supposed to be the higher class citizens area for my eventual city that I am working on. And honestly, it just looks so much better to have the stone down in an area where you're trying to make it look like there's heavy traffic. Although it does look a little blanketed. And what you'll notice is that eventually I do put in some lights and I do put in a railing going down the switchback. And I feel like it really tied it all together with the finished product. Now it was around this point chat and I started having a discussion about mods. Up until this point, I haven't had a single mod in this game. This was been a full vanilla. The only thing that isn't really a vanilla, quote unquote, is the fact that I'm using the hammer mode and peaceful mode just to make building a little bit easier. But chat actually talked me into using the mod Eternal Torches so that you didn't have to worry about refilling every single light source in your builds. And I'm going to do my best for the remainder of this build to keep mods purely cosmetic so that it doesn't alter the way things are built or the way they are perceived. Ah, yes, and here's that railing I was just discussing. This particular part of the railing was actually kind of like the test build, just to see if it would give the perception I was looking for. I wanted it to be see-through in a sense. I didn't want to do another stone wall, and I didn't want to do another wood wall. I wanted it to be something different than I've got anywhere else in the build so far. And as I said, once I've got the final product done, I feel like it really pulled the Switch back together. And at this point, I wanted to clear the stones out of the river, so I actually jumped on the raft, thinking it would be a little bit easier to stand on the raft and swing the pickaxe rather than standing on the long ship or trying to swim, because we all know how lovely it is to swim in Valheim when you're trying to do something. And I'm going to be honest, it worked fairly well. I did have to get in the water a little bit just for some final touches on a couple of stones. But for the larger stones, it worked pretty well, considering I didn't have to do any swimming. My stamina was always ready to go when I got to the stone. And I didn't really have to do much waiting in terms of letting my stamina rebuild once I got to the stones for clearing them out. And then here, if you hold shift, for those of you that may not know, if you hold shift and look at the ground a distance away from your feet, you will actually level to that groundwork as opposed to the ground under your feet. And I found that particular trick handy for trying to level out the bottom of the river just a little bit, just to really ensure I could get my boats in once it was time to do that. And we are going to park the raft and just do a little bit of cleaning up on the dock. And here's that bed I was discussing earlier. Now time to finish off this lovely railing. One of the comments that was discussed between myself and chat was it would be just a little bit nicer in terms of quality of life if our leveling tool with the hoe actually had some angled options, even if they were just options that match the already established angles in the game, the 26 degrees and the 45 degrees that you see present in most of your building materials. Now, as you'll notice, only one layer of this very terraced build only gets the railing. And the idea behind that is the area I'm currently putting the railing on is actually meant to be, once it's done, it's going to be a training yards area for some soldiers and things of that nature. The reason the lower terraces aren't getting the railing is because I haven't decided yet if they are going to be houses that back onto the hills and thus the railing wouldn't be necessary because the houses are there, or if it's going to be yards or something of that nature. I tend to kind of play my builds by ear, and so I didn't want to put something in that ends up discouraging an idea down the road just yet. So that'll pretty much wrap up this video. If you're still here, thanks for hanging in this long. Again, don't be afraid to hit that like and subscribe button, and leave a comment to let me know what you think of the build and what you might like to see in future parts of this build, because it is going to be a rather lengthy project for me. Thanks for hanging out. I'm T4. I'll see you next time.